Well, he's a believer in Botafogo, as I've told many people so far. I don't know. I'm a technology guy. I'm a bad former athlete like everybody else in the world. I'm inspired by my family. I'm inspired by my work. I'm inspired by the great changes that our world goes through constantly, and how those of us here can not just deal with that, but make things better. I've worked a long time. I feel like I've had many jobs. I'm only 56, but at times, career-wise, I feel much older. Now I'm getting to a point in my life where I have different goals in terms of what I do with my work. I have had great challenges in trying to bring the goals of community together with the goals of, in our country, capitalism, or in business elsewhere. And those are the projects that inspire me the most. I think that football is something that it was always with me. I played my whole life. I watched my kids play. And then I had a failure with work back in 2011, 2012. My world came crashing down. It was very difficult to deal with. But the relationships that I had built in my youth football academy, helping kids get to sort of the next place that they were going in life, that was the one thing I could really rely on when I was going through my own sort of personal struggles. Maybe in certain parts of business of the world, I learned that lesson. You have a very small number of friends in life that you can count on. But in football, soccer, up in the United States, the kids I was helping, the families that appreciated that help, they never left me. I think my relationship with football became closer during that period of time. I think it's defined, who I am today. When success came back to me and all of the false friendships were offered to me again, I felt liberated. I didn't need to engage in those false relationships. I had these families and these friends I developed through football. So my success came back. It came back maybe bigger than any of my prior failures. And so what do I do with that? I stayed close to the families and the people and the fun and the ideas that that had saved me. The people in football really saved me at a difficult time. So that's why I'm doing this now. I think I'd like to give one more answer to that. I think football, the connection between club and community is special. It's not found in any other sport that I'm aware of. Nothing against some of the great sports in this world, but I just feel like I've played everything. I think I've experienced everything except maybe cricket. And football, more than any other sport, brings people together. It brings communities together, even when we love to fight each other, we love to hate our rivals. I think we all know that this sport brings us together. It brings countries together. I think that's what has drawn me to football. I said a moment ago that, when things evolve, in culture, in, industry, across civilizations, opportunity comes through change. And I've learned a lot about how different models of football work in the world. Very investment-driven, ownership-driven in the United Kingdom. Powerful league, the Premier League, very well developed. But then you go to Portugal, and you see a similar structure in Portugal that they approved many years ago, where the associations, the people's clubs, created these SADs. And I think, though Portugal might have spent much more time kind of with that structure, I think the leading organizations there remain very political. So to see Brazil making these same decisions now, bad business decisions happen in the United States when politicians spend money to get votes. The same has happened in the world of football in Portugal and Spain. The mentality in Portugal that I've seen in clubs, it's been very much about what do we need to do to win the next election? Because the election gives the individuals in certain parts of the world, I'm not saying this about Brazil, but it gives people their fulfillment, maybe it gives them power, and so it becomes about the election. So they build up debt, they make irresponsible business decisions. We all know how to win an election in the United States. You spend enough money on your constituents so they vote for you. We all know how to win an election in Spain or in Portugal in football. Spend more money on players no matter what. You win the next election, right? So I see change as an opportunity. I think what's happening in Brazil, to be able to be involved at the very beginning of this decision, with all of the lessons that we've learned, not only in this country, but around the world, to maybe do it better this time. And what I think is really remarkable about Brazil, like, of course, I've been here getting to know the market. I've been looking at clubs for some time. Got two terrific young men that started teaching me about these decisions, these very, very wise decisions, in my opinion, that the government has been making to pass these laws, to clean up the debt in the past and position these SAFs to be successful. And so to know that the talent in Brazil is best in the world, I think along with France, along with Africa, I think that there are a few places in the world where the talent in football is clearly shown, that Portugal, but that also has a Brazilian pipeline. So that's exciting from a football perspective, but at the same time, to see the government and the clubs make these decisions to turn these into viable businesses that can learn from the lessons of other SADs or similar programs in the past, and to be invited in to be a part of that. It's a blank slate. It's irresistible. I told my family, I said, we have to do this. We have to be there at the beginning, and that's a special opportunity. Well, I think if people pay attention, they'll know that I was looking at smaller clubs. I mean, nobody just wakes up and says, I'm going to go buy Botafogo, right? And number one, no individual should ever feel like they bought such a club. These are people's clubs. These are community clubs. I think the opportunity to own a club is really the opportunity to be its caretaker, right? The club existed long before I was alive. The club will exist long after. So as far as what I just woke up and said, okay, I want to go to Brazil. It's going to be incredible. We get to be here at the beginning of this. I'll be honest. I was looking at clubs in the first division that were already there. Maybe they had some level of stability because they were already there. But I was looking at smaller markets, smaller opportunities. You know, it's a big deal to just wake up and say, I'm going to go buy Newcastle United, right? Or Botafogo or Benfica. These are the great, great legendary clubs where, and maybe they've fallen off that top level. That's an even tougher situation because the fans have a memory, they have a nostalgia, they have a belief in their heart that they deserve to see their team at these levels. And to take on that challenge, you have to be ready for it. You don't just wake up and say, I'm going to go buy Botafogo. But anyway, so how did Botafogo happen? You know, I was close to making a decision on another club, and these two young men that worked for me kept bringing up Botafogo. And I'm going, come on, right? So they kept bringing it up, and they said, John, let me show you why bigger is better. Let me show you why the challenges will be more fulfilling to you. Let me show you why the opportunity, you know, matches who you are as a person. I think this opportunity does match me as a person. And then it started to seem like possible. And then when it gets possible, like every person, you get closer and closer to a dream situation. You just have to have it, right? So this is why I'm here. But no, I cannot tell the fans here that, you know, that I live and breathe the black and white, or that the Lone Star is under my pillow at home, because Botafogo was one of those clubs that you just can't possibly imagine you can be involved in. So I'm very honored that everything lined up, and the dream of such a club is, you know, possible for me, and I think it's probably right for me. I think I am up to this challenge. It's a bit of a joke that I would look at a smaller club, because everything I've ever done, I was put on this earth to change the world. And so you can only change the world if you touch a lot of people. And through Botafogo, we can touch many, many people. Well, really, I've done sort of what I can do, so that management, so that George can take this, to the president, to take this to the club. I believe that they've done a very good job of, holding me accountable to their expectations. And I was fine with many of these requests, because these are my expectations. You cannot build this club back to and beyond its past glory without a significant investment. And if you look at the document, which I know all the fans will ultimately see at some point, everything the fans want, I think, is structured into the agreement. I certainly hope they feel this way. There was great alignment of those interests. Now the club needs to vote. We've structured it so that we can get money into the club quickly, because while there may be a process with the SAF, things that we have to do in terms of the legal process, the window does not wait for anyone. The player window is now. The state championship is starting now. The season is starting like tomorrow. And so we've structured it so that money can get into the club quickly, so that decisions can be made on players, so that the transformation of a second division team to a first division team, and a strong first division team, that has to happen now. That cannot wait for legal process. So, we'll see. It's now in the hands of the people at the club. Well, let's be clear what that was, right? That's hope. I've won nothing. We together have won nothing. What I saw that day was hope. It was very surprising. I heard a little bit on social media that people might be meeting me at the airport, but you see very strange stuff on social media, and it's unwise to believe anything on social media. So when I landed in Sao Paulo earlier in the day, I was a bit afraid. I've been very much behind the scenes at Crystal Palace. I've been enjoying being behind the scenes and less visible in some of my business success. And that goes back to some of, my prior success back pre-2010. I mean, it's very popular and very public, and, that's fleeting, right? Publicity and fame, even at a small level, it's a double-edged sword. So I was not looking forward to seeing a bunch of people waiting for me after a 10-hour flight when I looked horrible and hadn't slept. And I landed in Sao Paulo, and I was looking around corners, and I was like, oh, thank goodness, nobody's here. So I spent a little time in the airport, and I was completely off my guard. I get on this little flight up to Rio. Of course, nobody's going to be there. It was a lie that social media said they'd see me in Sao Paulo. So I came around the corner. I had my head down. I was tired. And then I look up and I see people pressing up against the glass, and they're pointing at me. And so I thought that I've been reading about the Ronaldo a lot lately. I thought maybe Ronaldo's on this flight. So, but it was amazing. I honestly did not expect it. I don't deserve it. Everybody should know we have a lot of work to do. But I accept their excitement as a manifestation of their hope and their dreams and their ambitions and their sense of history. Because I read everybody's comments on social media. I can't answer everything, but it does give you a good sense for how people feel. And I think they know the process. They know this moment in time. This is a historical thing that this country is going through. And I think their reaction reflected all of that hope and ambition. And if I was the focal point of it for a day, one of the most special days in my life, short of course, we're recording, so honey, our marriage, our kids, of course, 1, 2, but Botafogo probably 3. So it doesn't happen in most places in the world. And I'm also learning about football in England because I've watched it on TV for so long. At Crystal Palace, we've certainly had many moments like that. Crystal Palace has also been through a difficult journey. This is a shameless plug for the documentary called When Eagles Dare, available about Crystal Palace. But Crystal Palace was a club that had fallen on difficult times financially, and a bank, a very famous international bank, just clinically said, we're going to shut down the club. And the fans, but I can see the brotherhood of Botafogo fans and Crystal Palace fans forming over common experience, because the fans literally attacked the bank, and there was blue and red smoke, and they demanded a meeting. They demanded an audience of the bank, and they demanded that their club not be shut down. And for fans who were also businessmen, for a very small amount of money, it was, I'm sure, a lot to them, paid off the bank, took over the club, nearly were getting relegated from the second division, managed to avoid that in the same season, get promoted to the Premier League. And that was a story, as we see here in Botafogo, about how community matters, about how the fans really can make a difference. And what you'll see at Crystal Palace is, now that it's matured with businessmen that own it, that experience of relegation and near liquidation has changed the way that club operates. The businessmen, including myself as a major shareholder, know all of that history, feel a responsibility to that history, and so they take it forward very differently at Crystal Palace than you see at Arsenal or Tottenham or places that haven't seen that struggle. So Botafogo, I hope, obviously, no club should ever see the kind of struggle that Crystal Palace had to go through to come back. But being such a great champion, the glorious, and being relegated, and the fear and anxiety that creates, the championship last year, now the promotion, this explains why there's a brotherhood between the fans of Botafogo and the fans of Crystal Palace. Common experience, creates great relationships. Well, organic. That was not planned. There was, I was just meeting the people at Botafogo. I was communicating with my partners at Crystal Palace, but we're all independent men at Crystal Palace. And they were aware that I had interest in Brazil. But this was not a coordinated reaction. This was very organic. The people here were obviously very curious about who I might be. And I think the idea of collaboration with another top-level club, was exciting. And I mean, it's amazing. I remember for days looking at the social media and seeing the fans that were already doing customized logos, combining the eagle with the Lone Star, and painting the Lone Star in different colors, and imagining friendly games together, pre-season. All of it organic and very special. I particularly like the fans of each club providing an education to the others. This is our history. These are our great players. These are our rivals. And then the funniest part of the story is when Botafogo fans started crashing the social media accounts of Brighton, which is our big rival at Crystal Palace in England. And, there's many things that I cannot repeat on camera, but I did not mind seeing the Brighton fans have to deal with the the sharp-witted comedy of the Botafogo fans. Yeah, of course. I referred earlier to some of the expectations of the club, of any new owner, and certainly of me. Um, and so let's talk about that. What does a club need when it makes that transition from second level to first level? Um, it needs a lot, right? And I can get excited about the opportunity to invest in a global footprint of talent identification. I can get excited about building, investing in the academy structure. At Crystal Palace in particular, our chairman made a commitment prior to my arrival to fund the academy, and this past week we saw players from our academy on the field winning games in the Premier League. So all that is very important, and I do want to talk about that in a minute. But when you have this inflection point from second division to first division, as I said, the transfer window waits for no one. The season waits for no one. You have to be ready. You have to be ready quickly. You have to have momentum. Now, you carry that momentum because you just won. You won something very important. You were down at the second level, but you weren't down there with a bunch of second level teams. You're down there with Cruzeiro and Vasco. And honestly, I'm learning a lot about what happened in Brazil football, that is even possible, that such great teams could be in the second division. So to win the championship gives you great momentum. The mentality of winning is there. But we also know that momentum, has to be rationalized. There are players from that team that will play their way right into the first division. They will rise to the occasion and they will be leaders in the first division. There are players, I'm sure, and I'm not thinking about anybody specifically, that were very important to that championship campaign that may not sort of, reach the level we need them to be leaders in the first division. So there's only so much the coach and, the team that won last year really can do in terms of carrying that momentum into the first division without new resources, without capital, without a global view of talent, without new players. And so, certainly in the deal that the club very intelligently structured, there's a requirement for me to make a significant increase in the payroll of the club. Fans will want to see changes quickly. They'll want to see additions quickly. I hope to show the fans that having a global view of talent, having the kind of relationships that I'm lucky to have. I've got partners at Crystal Palace that also own other clubs. A big club in the United States, my partner David just bought. Big top-tier club in Germany he already owns. And so it's not just this brotherhood with Crystal Palace that we all have fun and enjoy, but it's a network of relationships that I hope to bring to the table so that we're not just, finding the most expensive player we can find in Brazil that everybody recognizes, but that we're bringing a player that nobody recognizes that has a true impact. There was an amazing young man at Crystal Palace that started yesterday's game against Millwall, and prior to that game, in his Premier League games, as one of the youngest players in the league, he had the highest involvement contribution, the amount of goals or assists in which he was involved, responsible for, and the amount of minutes he played. And so we knew coming in he was special. And yesterday he showed the whole world. And I was very happy to see that game on Brazil. But, that's the type of player that if you're just about, getting the big name and spending the money, then that player, Michael, doesn't show up on your roster. So you have to have a global footprint of talent identification. You have to think about those great veterans that you would like to return home from Europe to Brazil. We're going to chase some of them only if they can play. If they can't play anymore, I'm still going to chase them, and hopefully they'll just become part of the family again. But and then you have to have a balance of the people that we know perform very well at a first division level. We have to identify the people from last year's team that'll step up to that level. And we have to build this greatness through youth, not just youth in Brazil, but youth globally. Now, the key to our multi-club kind of philosophy is that there are immigration constraints all over the world. And what we've put together in our family of friendships and family of clubs are countries that provide incredible mobility for the talent in one country to play in another. The United States might be one of the greatest untapped sources of talent, and they have such a poorly developed professional system there that talent doesn't get out of the United States. And so I'm very interested in testing the level of those players to see if they can really perform here. And the same with our players in the UK. Maybe the best league in the world, right? The Premier League. Are they the best players? Well, chances are immigration has a lot to do with limiting the competition they've had. So, I mean, those players, I'd love to see them tested here in Brazil. A lot to do, and I've touched on a lot of points. To get back to your question, the contract requires an immediate reaction on capital. The management and the sporting group here has to make an immediate assessment of who in last year's team is going to be able to step up to the next level. Everybody has a chance. We're going to bring in players. We're going to test their level against this team, and we're going to test this team against those players. And you know, we're here to win. I hope it comes immediately. I understand the fans' expectations. We're going to work every day to try and get the Glorious back to its proper place in history. I think it's an expected and understandable fear, but it's a fear that doesn't have a great deal of historical foundation in this example. No one club should ever be a feeder to another club. What I'm fortunate to have in the relationships that I have is a combination of top-tier clubs in their own parts of the world with massive fan bases, and neither the fans nor the players nor the coaches would ever accept at Botafogo that they're here to feed somebody else, or that Palace is there to feed somebody else. I think that it's important to understand, that talent, Brazil is an incredible place for talent, but if you look at the roster of Botafogo and you see maybe one, maybe two players from outside of Brazil, I think that's a missed opportunity. And so I think a multi-club collaboration where owners, either friends or in my case, I have an interest in multiple clubs, understand what the needs are in one region and what the needs are on a roster. And you may have a big academy at one club. Certainly Crystal Palace has got an incredible catchment area in South London. It's not possible for Crystal Palace to satisfy that developing talent with just one roster. And so the knowledge that the people at Palace have about players in their system, the recruiting that they have, the data, scouting is very underdeveloped in my opinion in Brazil. Data is very undeveloped in my opinion in Brazil. Other parts of the world, the talent of school-age children might be the same, but the development and the discipline and the drilling of those players into successful performance, is different in different parts of the world, and so we can learn from that. But certainly, even if we just are taking advantage of our relationships in different parts of the world, where I'm able to call the sporting director of another club and say, do you have data on this player? I can tell you the way data works. I mean, we have scouts everywhere. Every game is watched. The data, performance of the player, physical, technical, creative, it's all tracked. And I find that very undeveloped here in Brazil. So I think if anything, and I said this about a similar situation to a club in Portugal, you have to open up and you have to reach out and you have to be global and you have to be open-minded and you have to understand that the Botafogo fans, yes, they love their Brazilian players winning championships in Brazil and they love seeing those players get to the national team, but they love winning more than all of that, right? And so I don't think they'll mind if, 10% or 20% of the roster over the time becomes very international. So no one club should ever be positioned to be a feeder of another. They have to get as much as they give. I think that player sales are a normal part of business, but if you do it right, you should be able to expose your players to opportunities and to a global scouting footprint so that when you do sell a player's rights, you get as much as you possibly can for it because that player is marketable, so you can sell fewer players. So you want to retain as much talent. You want to open yourself up to the globe of talent, and these relationships have to be two-way. I truly believe, looking at the roster today, I think people will want to play in Brazil. I think they'll want to be in Rio, some of the most beautiful cities in the world. I think that we're going to have to bring those players here so that they can see it firsthand. It looks much better in person than it does on the postcard. And they can feel what it's like here. And I think there's going to be a lot more inflow to this roster than outflow if we do our jobs right. It's wonderful. This imagery, the star rising out of the crowd, the dog, the jersey rising out of the crowd. I haven't seen anything like this. Unbelievable. Those are players. Wow. Oh yeah? Let's take my shirt off. What do you think? You don't want to see it. Oh God. Where is this, the stadium? The big national stadium? Acompanhe. Yeah. Can you send this to me? You have to send this to me.